Hey y'all, welcome back. Today we're checking out the 7 songs to blame for Stomp Clap Hey.
For the briefest moment in the early 2010s, Stomp Clap ruled the airwaves. The Lumineers were vying for chart places with Rihanna and Bruno Mars. Mumford & Sons of Monsters and Men and Vance Joy too were getting rich off hoedowns, hootenannies and rave-ups. And everyone was dressed like they were in There Will Be Blood. It was a millennial-tinged Americana, Obama-era folk pop. A whole lot of stomping, clapping, hooting, hollering. It was nostalgia for the old times, infused with blinding sincerity, an absolute aversion to irony, and an overabundance of percussion. But what were its influences, the vital steps along the way, and how did we get to the point where Ho Hey was a pop hit?
Yeah.
These are the 7 songs that made Stomp Clap happen.
Yo, I didn't realize Stomp Clap Hey was a genre or a style until I saw the thumbnail for this video. But as soon as I saw it, I knew exactly what it meant. Exactly what it meant. That was really big then. There were a bunch of bands that did that. Right? I remember the Lumineers, Ho Hey. That was a huge song. I love that song. But it seemed weird that it was such a big hit. It did scratch an itch, though, I feel like we all had. There were the Lumineers, Mumford & Son, who was on the thumbnail, the Fleet Foxes, Stephen Phillips, Vance, that guy Vance, the guy Vance. He had that song where he's playing like a ukulele or something, and he mentions Michelle Pfeiffer, I think, maybe. Anyway, y'all be sure to go to Trash Theory and like and subscribe. This is a long video, so I think we're going to split it up into 2 parts. This is part 1. You made it. Oh, brother, where art thou? May 2000, the Soggy Bottom Boys. Man of constant sorrow.
The music that Stomp Clap draws from, bluegrass and folk, dates back to the 1940s and way earlier, respectively. But what made it relevant for listeners in the 21st century was a Depression-era comedy road movie directed by the Coen brothers. 2000's Oh Brother, Where Art Thou tells the story of 3 convicts on the run, and amongst other misadventures, gaining an unexpected radio hit.
I love this movie. I love Coen Brothers movies. I thought this was great. I had this on DVD. I didn't realize that must have whet people's appetite for Stomp Clap Hey, I guess, right? Made people aware of it?
The film is part adaptation of Homer's Odyssey, part American music history lesson, taking in bluegrass, gospel, string band music, and old-time country, while also tipping the hat to the legend of blues player Robert Johnson, selling his soul to the devil.
What did the devil give you for your soul, Tommy?
Well, he taught me to play this here guitar real good.
Oh, son, for that you traded your everlasting soul?
Well, I wouldn't use it.
The Coens had been fans of vintage country and western since college, and the soundtrack was sketched out before the film had even been written. T-Bone Burnett, who'd worked with the Coens before on The Big Lebowski, was music supervisor, tracking down the perfect era-appropriate songs to tell their story.
Respect to T-Bone Burnett. Cheers, Mr. Burnett, T-Bone, sir.
From Harry McClintock's Hobo Fantasy, Big Rock Candy Mountain from 1928.
And the cigarette trees, the lemonade springs where the bluebird sings in the Big Rock Candy Mountain.
To the traditional prison work song, Po Lazarus, field recorded by the legendary folklorist Alan Lomax in 1959.
Oh, wow.
Most tracks, though, were...
Wait, so what we heard in the film was actually a real recording of them? The actual prison gang?
Most tracks, though, were re-recorded by more contemporary artists like Alison Krauss, Gillian Welch, Chris Thomas King, and child harmony group The Peaceful Sisters. However, the song with which George Clooney's thrown-together band, the Soggy Bottom Boys, became a statewide sensation was Man of Constant Sorrow. First published by Appalachian blind folk singer Dick Burnett as Farewell Song in 1913, though with many believing the song's origins may be centuries older. It was a reinterpretation by the Stanley Brothers in the 1950s that made the song a vital part of the country canon.
I am a man of constant sorrow.
Wow, that guy's voice sounds so authentic and convincing. So this song, Man of Constant Sorrow, might be centuries old. That's what he's saying. I didn't know that. I thought it was written for the movie. First published by Appalachian blind folk singer Dick Burnett as the Farewell Song in 1913. Wow, okay.
By the Stanley Brothers in the 1950s that made the song a vital part of the country canon.
I am a man of constant
Melody's a little different. A little something different.
Bob Dylan, Joan Baez, Judy Collins, Rod Stewart, and Ginger Baker have all recorded variations.
What?
T-Bone Burnett had previously pushed the Stanley Brothers version for Lebowski, but it ended up suiting the character's troubles in Oh Brother much better.
The place where I was born and raised.
The version we used for our template was the version the Stanley Brothers had done, with two singers answering the last line of every verse.
The place where he was born and raised.
Which is, of course, comedic and paradoxical, as the tune is about a tore-down, blown-out cat, with these other voices attesting to the veracity of his tragic state of affairs.
He has no friends to help him now.
Somehow, the song captured the tone of the movie, epic and dead serious on the one hand, and comic and affable on the other. Though Clooney had attempted to sing the track, he claims he sounded just terrible, and so was replaced on the record by Alison Krauss and the Union State guitarist, Dan Tyminski. The surviving Stanley brother, Ralph, appears elsewhere on the soundtrack, singing a haunting a cappella of the traditional folk song, Oh Death.
Oh, death. Oh, death.
The film did okay.
That's that guy's voice. That's authentic. Wow. The, Tyminski guy, what was his name again? Dan Tyminski, he sounds authentic too. He sounds like he's came down from the mountains.
Oh, death. Oh, death.
The film did okay. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou was not a box office smash, but oddly its soundtrack was, with little radio airplay because who was playing 30s bluegrass on the radio.
Right.
In the US, it ended up topping the soundtrack, country, and Billboard 200 album charts, and sold over 8 million copies.
I was going to say it won Album of the Year, which was really strange because it's a movie soundtrack. It beat out Outkast Stankonia is what he's saying. Wow.
It also beat Outkast's Stankonia to Album of the Year at the Grammys in 2002.
That's ridiculous,
Afterwards,
actually.
bluegrass, acoustic country, and banjos had a resurgence. The musicians from Oh Brother sold out package tours. Billboard introduced the Bluegrass Albums chart, where Nickel Creek got the first #1 album that wasn't the Oh Brother soundtrack with This Side. And Young Gun's Old Crow Medicine Show fleshed out an old Bob Dylan demo and became inescapable with their Americana-modelled new standard, Wagon Wheel.
Rock me, mama, like a wagon wheel. Rock me, mama, any way you feel.
I don't like that song because I used to live in Atlanta, Georgia, and every time you go see some band play that has even a little bit of country tinge to it, they break out that cover, Rock Me Mama, and it's a very repetitive song, but that's just me. I didn't care. Now that they're mentioning it, I do remember there being a really big bluegrass movement in those early 2000s, but I remember seeing it more, but I thought that was just because I moved to Georgia. I thought Atlanta was surrounded by all these bluegrass bands that would come to the city to record, but it was countrywide, apparently. I had my face buried in the studio, and I was not aware that this was happening. Wake up, Arcade Fire. Arcade Fire and Funeral, September 2004. Wake up. Arcade Fire's a great band. Canadians.
Arcade Fire was formed by Win Butler and his friend Josh Dew in Montreal, Canada in 2001. Butler, an American, met Dew via a mutual friend while attending Sarah Lawrence College in New York. The two decided to move to Boston, spending the next 2 years honing their songwriting chops before Dude decided to return to his home in Montreal. Butler followed. After a couple of false starts, it was when he met the daughter of Haitian refugees, Regine Chassaing, that things started to coalesce. She was into jazz, Bach, and medieval instrumentation, and her creative arrangements perfectly disrupted Butler's fate as just another uninspired indie rocker. The group were off-kilter from the start, augmenting standard bass guitar and drums with accordion, violin, keyboards, xylophone, and brass. The lineup too was fluid, sometimes ballooning to 10 members on stage, though almost always including multi-instrumentalist Richard Reed Parry and snare-tossing musical anarchist Wynn's younger brother, Will Butler. All would be dancing, shouting to the sky and swapping instruments amongst the thunderous post-punk wall of sound they'd constructed from blood, sweat and tears.
Us kids know.
Some people get so rabid at our shows. They get these cathartic experiences, and they'll say it too. We saw you that time at so-and-so, and it was the best thing we ever saw, which does give me a twinge of pride. That's what I always wanted at a rock show, to sweat and cry and scream a lot.
That's a good point. There is something about a bunch of people on stage, too. It makes it feel more like a party. It's just more people. There's something about it.
After their debut self-titled EP in 2003, Dew left and the band collapsed. The remaining members would regroup and record sporadically over the next year, resulting in their 2004 debut album, Funeral. The title was in reference to the spate of band family members passing as the album neared completion. But this was no mourning of loss. This was about bringing people together via full-throated emotion and tales about kids stuck in snow-log cities. In many ways, it was the conceptual Bleeding Heart show of Neutral Milk Hotel. But with the references to Anne Frank's Ghost replaced by the diverse big music orchestration of Echo and the Bunnymen's Ocean Rain. The album's centerpiece is Wake Up. Huge drums and massive guitars, the bed with which Butler sees the disappointment of growing up. It is the moment where Butler's oblique metaphors slip away. Words no longer exist to express his feelings. Instead supplanted by...
I remember that was in a bunch of movies and commercials, I think, right?
Instead supplanted by the full band singing in unison its rapturous chorus. Funeral allowed indie rock music to delve deep into the big subjects of love and death, at the same time when the new rock revolution groups were more than happy singing about drinking, partying, and getting laid. The thing that interests me is singing about the things that you're not supposed to sing about in rock, finding simple ways to articulate difficult, complicated feelings. You get so tired of music and film and culture when ideas are not expressed. And if you care about things and you're part of pop culture, it's important that you have ideas in your music about something not to do with how you're bought and sold. Otherwise, you're just joining in with all the rubbish.
Wow, he's right. You get so tired of music and film and culture when ideas are not expressed. That's interesting. I've heard that, music styles ebb and flow, and people's preferences do too. I've heard that when the economy's good, when life is good, you want to delve into the deeper meanings of life, and you do want to dip your toe into, like, sad emotions, negative things, like just more nuance. But when times are bad, you look to music and film and, like he's saying, media, I guess, for escape. And you want it to be all happy and help you forget and be, like, fantastic and crazy. And I guess this came out in 2000. 2004, did it say? 2004. My remembrance of 2004 was a lot about the Iraq War, whether or not we should invade Iraq, and a lot of people were saying no, why? And a lot of other people were saying yes, absolutely. It's a complicated time. But I feel like the economy and everything was pretty good, I guess. I don't know, compared to now. But I guess it's all, perspective. I guess it's not either or. It's like a gradient. Maybe we're in the transition phase. I find it interesting, too, that he mentioned that, like, the bands that were kind of big before they came around were singing about, like, pretty typical rock stuff, like partying. And Arcade Fire came along and said, hey, we're kind of sad. We're sad over here.
Before the September 2004 release of Funeral, their growing Montreal fanbase aside, Arcade Fire were basically unknowns. A florid pre-release review of the album on Pitchfork, Best New Music and rated a 9.7, would make it so that independent label Merge would find it hard to keep the album stocked in record stores for the first 3 months. By the end of 2005, they were turning down major labels left and right, had acquired famous fans in David's Bowie and Byrne, and U2 were using Wake Up for their Vertigo tour Walk On music. The album's 4th single, Rebellion Lies, was even a top 20 hit in the UK. Allegations of sexual misconduct directed at Win Butler in 2022 have since fractured their legacy. But for a brief moment in 2005, Arcade Fire were the band that was going to save rock and roll. Many others took notes, now aware that the usually introverted indie rock scene could be big, bold and bombastic. But others preferred the easy route, taking the non-standard instrumentation, the surfeit of members, and Wake Up's euphoric cool, a moment where Funeral's emotions spilled over into a wordless outpouring, and made that simply a gimmick they could fashion a song around. A lot of haze and O's, but little substance.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize Arcade Fire was so influential. That's amazing. I forgot about the sexual allegations. I remember, I think it was the album after that one that I really got into. What's it called? The Suburbs. It's a good album. Okay. Bon Iver and Fort Emma, Forever Ago. July 2007, Skinny Love. Skinny Love, Bon Iver. Have I heard this?
At the same time of Arcade Fire's Funeral, a brace of indie folk acts were accumulating buzz on the online music blogs, as the maximalist new rock revolution groups ate up most of their attention in the first half of the decade. Indie folk offered a quieter, more introspective counterpoint, taking cues from Elliott Smith, Will Oldham, and Neutral Milk Hotel.
Eyes wide open. It's like golden corn.
Oh, my love, oh, it was a funny little thing.
I know you have a heavy heart. I can feel it in the morning at the top of the stairs when your father found out.
Fleet Foxes. I had forgotten about all these acts. Man, there really were a lot of them.
In 2005, Justin Vernon moved with his band, Diamant Edison, from the wintry climes of northern Wisconsin to the more humid North Carolina. He'd been in the band since he was a teenager, but after years of going nowhere, this was the kind of shake-up they needed to climb out of obscurity.
Pancaked on the floor, you can't see my face.
Vernon hated the move, the heat, and having to work a kitchen job on the side to make rent. He also suffered through sequential bouts of pneumonia, mono, and then a liver infection as a result of the mono, his body rejecting his current situation.
Wow.
And when he did get to do band stuff, the band seemed uninterested in his ideas. His whole life was collapsing around him. I think that musically I realized I was compromising a lot. It wasn't anybody else's fault but mine. I had compromised so much for so many years. And on a personal level too, I'd compromised a lot. Not morals, but just thoughts in general. For 5 or 6 years there, I went from where I really thought I had purpose, and something to do, and to give, or to be, and to feeling really mediocre. It was like a weird spiraling mediocrity thing. And so we left. left the band, broke up with his girlfriend, and broke with civilization at large,
Whoa.
spending the winter of 2006-07 alone in his father's cabin in the wilds of Wisconsin.
Whoa, that is a life change. Broke up with his girlfriend, left his band, and moved to his father's cabin in the wilds of Wisconsin.
There he attempted to straighten out his head, occupying himself by hunting deer, chopping wood, and drinking beer. At some point he remembered he had his guitar and some recording equipment in his car, so he brought it inside the cabin and started exercising spirits of romances past, trying to work out where he kept going wrong. It's centered around an ancient, long-lost love. But as happens in people's lives, old relationships often have plenty to do with new relationships as they come along. A lot of the album is about me trying to grow up, about trying to grow into new love and failing at it. It's telling a story of one last relationship and how other ones collided with it. Previously, Vernon had aspired to be Springsteen or Bob Dylan, but being away from everything, not having his standards to fall back on, his touchstones were more elemental. Yeah. Choirs, Appalachian folk music, the literal sound of the mountains. His voice came out in a previously untapped falsetto, which he bolstered by layering multiple takes, the words slipping out of his subconscious. Arrangements were sparse. On Skinny Love, it was just him and his increasingly frenetic guitar. Come on, Skinny Love, just let's sing it. Various stomps to keep time on his impassioned dissection of a malnourished relationship. And now all your love is wasted, then who the hell was I? Come March 2007, Vernon was ready to get back to reality, though it took him a while to realize that maybe he should release his lo-fi cabin sessions as an album.
Yes.
In July, he placed the tracks on MySpace and self-released a run of 500 copies, naming the album For Emma Forever Ago. Rather than using his name, he released it as Bon Iver, a mishearing of the French phrase for good winter, which he'd encountered watching Alaska set comedy drama Northern Exposure.
Holling, it's starting to snow.
Yeah. Isn't that nice?
Bon Iver, Holling.
Bon Iver, Ed.
Wow.
Because of the emotionality.
I loved that show, Northern Exposure. I think I've seen every episode. I've always said Bon Iver. I've never heard this album. I've only ever read his name, or the name of the thing. Yeah.
Because of the emotionality of the songs and the story that came with it, music blogs were instantly besotted with the album, Pitchfork rating it an 8.1 and placing it in their top 50 albums of 2007.
Nice.
Due to this increased interest, For Emma would receive a wider release through indies Jaguar and 4AD in 2008. By the end of the year, he had showcased his woodsy indie folk on Later with Jules Holland in the UK and David Letterman in the US, and was well on his way to going gold in both territories. And while the album sold well for an indie release, its influence was instant. It was the moment open mic nights went from acoustic alt-rock and ironic Hagar covers to bearded, knit-capped men attempting the raw authenticity of Skinny Love. Vernon, though, was stifled by the success, and as soon as 2009's Blood Bank EP attempted to banish the Mountain Man connection, bringing in more post-rock, yacht rock, and aggressive auto-tune to his original minimalist folk. However, once something becomes successful...
He doesn't need that auto-tune. I find it so amazing that he recorded this album in a cabin just for fun, and it became this huge hit. I love that. I love that.
Authenticity of Skinny Love. Vernon, though, was stifled by the success, and as soon as 2009's Blood Bank EP attempted to banish the Mountain Man connection, bringing in more post-rock, yacht rock, and aggressive auto-tune to his original minimalist folk. However, once something becomes successful, soon enough someone less squeamish about being in the spotlight is going to clone it and cash in.
Right. That happens all the time, doesn't it? I love how he said that. However, once something becomes successful, soon enough, someone else less squeamish about being in the spotlight is going to clone it and cash in. That's so true. I want to cash in. Okay. Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros, July 2009, Home. I don't know this one. Home, Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros.
Alex Iver was a former major label casualty. In 2002, around the time the Big Three were looking for their own version of The Strokes or Yeah Yeah Yeahs, Iver's dance punk combo I'm a Robot was picked up by EMI. Problem was that they never had a last night on maps. Iver stalked the stage like a napalm-hearted cheater, but grew frustrated that the powers that be demanded he write hits. After 2006's Monuments to the Masses continued to do nothing, they were freed from their contract. But addiction and the band's non-success weighed on him, until he broke from his cycle. He felt beaten down by playing this role on stage, this unsmiling rocker, unfeeling and sarcastic, because that was what was deemed cool at the time. So to combat this, he rebuilt himself, reverting to a place of innocence, to childhood, and his first introductions to music. His dad's Willie Nelson, Vangelis, and Ennio Morricone records. So he threw away his phone, bought a bus from Craigslist, and hired perhaps too many people to be his new band, replacing I'm a Robot's cold cynicism with a warmer, more positive vibe. His new project was Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros. Their 2009 debut, Up From Below, was a lo-fi remake of 60s psychedelic pop, with a melange of brass, tambourines, clapping, and off-key shouts. Ebert himself, no longer a punk.
I've never heard this, but I like it. I like that.
Ebert himself, no longer a punk, but their natural enemy, a hippie. This turncoat move knocked the music press's noses out of joint. Pitchfork gave the album a 4.1, mostly because of this supposed inauthenticity. The group seemingly freak folk bandwagon jumpers, who stank of artifice. Ebert, a former dance punk, now dressed like hipster Jesus. I guess I must be putting something forth that warrants a thorough vetting of my personal authenticity, which is more than I can say for almost any other current musical act. Almost everyone is not pretending to be authentic in any regard, and no one ever questions Lady Gaga's authenticity.
Good point.
It's irrelevant. It's clearly dishonest, and clearly all for show.
Yeah. So I guess the thing is, when you were the rocker, were you being inauthentic, or are you being inauthentic now? I think it's just because, like, when someone makes a huge change like that, it smells fishy. Because either one way or the other, probably inauthentic. But people can change, right? He was a rocker. Maybe he was authentically a rocker before, but he got tired of that. He became a hippie. That's fine. People grow, right? Fine.
But the one aspect that the reviewer couldn't deny was the track Home.
Let me go home. Home is wherever I'm with you.
Is the kind of conversational country duet that Johnny Cash and June Carter used to make.
Got mad in a fever, harder than a pepper sprout.
With splotches of the Mouldy Peaches anti-folk tweeness. Also present is a spaghetti western edge. In fact, most of the non-standard elements of the song, the whistling, the stomping, the clapping, and the cold, broken victory of the horn intermissions, was inspired by Ennio Morricone. The remarkably sincere spoken word section at the middle 8 was a late stage addition, retelling the true story of when his whiskey-voiced duet partner Jade Castronos defenestrated herself.
Do you remember that day you fell out of my window?
I sure do. You came jumping out after me.
Iver decided this was the perfect moment to take this song of friendship to the next level by revealing his love for her.
I was falling deeply in love with you.
Her flustered reaction completely genuine.
And I never told you till just now.
In 2010, Home was everywhere. It soundtracked advertisements for the NFL, Microsoft's attempt at the BlackBerry, Levi's, and a trailer for the Jonah Hill vehicle, Cyrus. Already burnt by the major label system, Ebert had no qualms leasing his work to the highest bidder. Since then, it has become a wedding first dance favourite, ever present on alternative radio, and more recently in 2025, has been dubbed the worst song ever made. Part of this is because of the now cloying, unguarded optimism of the track, and naivety that everything could be okay. But mostly, people hate it due to its part in forming the Stomp Clap moment, a designation that Ebert embraces, and sees as an essential part of music history's ebb and flow. Really, Stomp Clap is like the monstrous answer to the monstrous hypocrisy of rock and roll, where you had the orthodoxy of non-conformity, but no one wanted to realize that, because it was so safe. I mean, what a nice convenience to be thinking that you're being unsafe, while being perfectly safe. To feel like you're rebellious, while you're not at all. To feel like you're part of a counterculture that is just the culture.
That's very interesting. It's basically saying those rock bands that came before, like the Strokes, the Yeah-Yeah-Yeahs, they were presented as rebellious, but really, were they? If everybody's doing that style? Like, not really. I feel like the Strokes started that, but then it was such a big thing that a lot of bands started copying it, and it became the normal. What a nice convenience to be thinking that you're being unsafe while being perfectly safe. So you're having fun, but not realizing it. Wow. Okay. Wow. Y'all, like I said at the beginning, this is going to be in 2 parts. I think we're going to stop it here. Yeah, I'd like to say thanks to my patrons. Thanks to my Buy Me a Coffee folks. Thank y'all for watching this with me. And I'll see y'all next time for part 2. Later.